This edition of Mac Voices is supported by you, our viewers and listeners, through our Patreon and PayPal sponsorship options. To learn more, visit macvoices.com/support. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 2 of a conversation with Adam Engst during a presentation to the Virginia Macintosh User Group. And as I said at the end of the first part, when you talk to Apple user groups, you never know what direction the conversation is going to take because the questions from the audience lead you one direction and then jump off into something completely different. This one was no exception. We were all over the place with lots of different opinions and topics, and I think you will enjoy it. I know I sure did. So let's go right back to the conversation with VMUG and Adam. Adam, how about the comment from Ray? A while back, I remember hearing about that Apple and Tesla were collaborating. Any rumors?
I haven't heard any more about that recently. And talk about Apple working on first a car and then a car operating system. Boy, not much has been heard about that in a long time. I think we'd all love to see it in some ways because Apple does great design work, but at the same time, companies usually pretty careful about where it expands. And I think if they didn't feel like they were going to be able to do something sufficiently different, they probably wouldn't. And so I have not heard any more about Tesla. And I have to say, I feel as though Apple and Tesla, or perhaps more anthropomorphically, Tim Cook and Elon Musk aren't a good fit. I mean, Elon Musk he's nuts. I mean, let's face it, the man is crazy. That's not entirely a bad thing, but he's nuts. And Tim Cook is just so calm and rational and level-headed. I just can't see Apple and Tesla as sort of corporate cultures intersecting in any useful way. And don't get me wrong. I think Musk is crazy, but I think he's crazy in a good way because sometimes you have to be crazy to do the kinds of things and achieve the kinds of things he's done. But man, is he nuts! So, any event.
Here's to the crazy ones.
Yeah. Seriously.
Wonder where we heard that before.
Yeah.
I think it's the whole Apple Car thing is fascinating, and I point to CarPlay, and I don't know, Adam, if you have a CarPlay unit in your
2015, just too early. Damn it.
Sure. Okay. Well, you can still get third-party head units.
I know.
That will give
just so annoyed. I just want to upgrade my software and have the car do it.
Well, that's sort of where I was going because I do have one that has Apple CarPlay, and it is a genuine pleasure to use. And then I have another family member who drives a company car that is equipped with an operating system from another company that starts with an M that we shall not name, and it is a disaster. It is horrendous. Yeah. And I mean, I can't even tell you the number of error messages that pop up on that screen on a regular basis, and how it will insist and annoyingly just repeat error problem. We can't connect. Okay, I hear you. We can't connect. Okay, it just. I mean, CarPlay does its thing. It does it unobtrusively. The worst I've had, and it ended up being a bad USB cable, is that it just would not connect. Swap the cable out and bang, it's there. And I have a very nice touchscreen control of everything that I want, and including now they're doing some third-party apps. Overcast, for one, is the one that jumps to mind, but there are a number of other audiobooks, at least 2 other audiobook options I know of. And it's just a positive experience. So that gives me hope and optimism that maybe Apple will continue down the car path.
Yeah, I've used CarPlay a couple of times in rental cars, actually in Europe, and it was in England, and a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I was pretty impressed with it on the whole, as a way of it's just nice to sort of intersect, to bring the capabilities of your iPhone and what you're used to an interface that you can use more effectively in the car. And Judy is asking in the chat, sort of what's it best for? I think what I would say, and this Chuck will obviously know way more than I do because he's used it much more, is just the idea that context matters with interfaces. So, you can adjust the radio or whatnot in your car because it's sort of put in an appropriate place where you can continue to drive safely. And we all know that you should not be using your iPhone when you're driving because that would be dumb. And so CarPlay is really a nice way to make that kind of thing, the kind of entertainment and interacting with the car, first and foremost, a car interface rather than a phone interface.
And primarily, we're talking about either entertainment systems or communication systems. So, for example, I mean, of course, you have the S lady. I'm not going to say her name because we'll trigger every device in Virginia. But you can tell her to read a text message that you hear chime as it comes in, or you can tell her to read your unread mail to you while you're driving. The buttons are nice and big, so on the controls for both the Apple apps and the non-Apple apps, so that you're not trying to steer the car and also hit that little half-inch by half-inch square. They're nice and big so you can do that. They don't try to cramp too much information on one screen, and that's such a danger and such a mistake that I think we see so many interfaces make, and it doesn't. Max in the chat room says Consumer Reports rated in-car systems and Apple CarPlay was far ahead of everyone, but his seems slow lately, and I'm hoping for an upgrade. I know my system. I have a Honda Accord. I know that there are hard firmware updates that you can get for the actual head unit. But of course, there are also updates to CarPlay on your phone. So if you're having problems, make sure you are up to speed on both sets of upgrades, and that's going to give it the best chance for the best performance.
And just to bring this back to some of the stuff we're also talking about, in iOS 14, CarPlay is going to get some significant updates. Like parking guidance, EV charging directions. So if you have an electric car, you'll be able to get directions to charging points. And but the big one, and this is again, I'm just so irritated that I can't update my cars. I have a 2015 Nissan Leaf and a 2015 Subaru Outback. Is that you're going to be able to use your phone or your Apple Watch as your car key, but only if you have recent model BMW, like recent model meaning like made after July 2020. And not necessarily all of them at that point. Obviously, that's going to be rolling out to more cars, but I think that's the thing that I actually sort of looking forward to the most, is being able to not have that little key fob, have to carry it with me at all times. Partly, again, I'm a runner, so I drive somewhere and I'm running a race or whatever. I have to be constantly keeping track of my key. It'd be much nicer to just have it on my wrist, attached to me. So, I think there's going to be people are going to really like that, but it's going to take a while for it to work its way out into the car systems.
But they have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And because they've done that with wireless CarPlay too. They've started at the very high-end luxury vehicles, and now it seems that it's starting to slowly come down to the more affordable vehicles.
And I have to believe this is basically car manufacturers being sluggish, because again, they want you to buy a new car. If there's no reason to buy a new car, because these things last for a long time now, and so there's always that. What are we going to do to make people want to buy a new car? And so I fear that this is the lack of upgradability is one of the ways that they do that. And I won't deny it. I'm a little bit more likely to buy a new car sooner, because it would be nice to be able to get the stuff that's going to actually work with my modern Apple devices.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Certainly.
All I did was go down for my 2012 Toyota and put a new radio in and put in Apple Play for less than $600.
So I have looked at the head units, and the problem is I mean, if I had a 2012, it would be an easy decision. But because these are 15s, for the most part, they're fine, right? Like I'm complaining because this is a first world problem, and I'm an Apple professional who would like to be able to try CarPlay. But the question is right? Is it worth $600 for me to replace a perfectly functional head unit, or a head unit that's perfectly functional in every other way?
Hopefully your radio will break.
Yeah, once it breaks, it's out of here. Let me tell you.
Plus the fact that it also included an HDMI and a backup ability to monitor.
Yeah,
it was well worth it.
Yeah. Well,
okay, sorry. No,
I was just going to say, I mean, the previous cars we had we actually replaced both of our cars in 2015 because our son turned 16, and we realized that he wasn't going to be necessarily, he was going to start driving, and we didn't want him driving our 1996 Subaru Outback or our 2001 Honda Civic. So we had 14 and 19-year-old cars, and that's when wow, the cars have come a long way when you've waited that long. And boy, right. Neither of those cars had backup cameras or anything like that. And so that's where replacing a head unit would get you a huge amount more. In our case, what we were really looking for was electronic traction control and stuff like that for our somewhat klutzy son, who has actually turned into a very good driver. But we were worried.
Max says, having used CarPlay for 35,000 miles, paid the $600.
Okay. Honest, I'll look into it. You guys got me convinced.
Yeah, because I would kind of agree with that. On the other hand, Judy says, haven't used it much, but working from home means I don't drive much of anywhere.
Well, there is that. We actually have these two cars, but in fact, we gave our son he's a senior at Cornell, living in an apartment, and over the summer we just gave him our Subaru because we're not doing anything. We're not going out. So we don't need two cars, and Tanya's not going to work, and we're not driving hardly at all. So we told him we did need the Subaru back once it got to be winter, though. So he doesn't get to keep the snow car.
But your attitude, though, toward upgrading the car, or buying a new car, I should say, is really an interesting one. It's no longer about the power, and it's not necessarily even about the longevity. It's more about some of what before would have been ancillary things.
Yeah.
The upgradability, the integration. Integrate your car with your phone. I mean, who would have thought that 15 years ago? But here we are.
Well, and in fact, I mean, I think this is actually a larger topic because, in fact, I did just buy a 2020 iMac literally a month ago, and I was replacing a 2014 Retina 20. This is both 27-inch Retina iMacs, and the reason why I did it was not that I was actually perturbed about the performance. My 2014 iMac was doing fine. I had 32 gig of RAM in it, and it really wasn't a problem. The problem was its internal SSD died, and it just got flaky, particularly after the SSD died. And so, plus it only had, USB 3 and Thunderbolt 2 and stuff like that. So, I mean, I switched to the 2020 iMac, migrated everything over, doesn't feel a bit different. Except for the fact that I don't get weird stuff happening. Like on the old one, every time I restarted, Wi-Fi was disabled for the first 2.5 minutes. Still don't know why. I mean, just like it was literally, the little icon was grayed out. No clue. 2.5 minutes, it would pop it back to life and I'd be fine. So, that's the kind of thing where, and cars get that way too, right? They start to rattle, or, it doesn't start quite right when it's cold, or those sort of things. And at some point, all those little things add up. Like, yep, need a new car. And so, I think we are hitting those situations where it's the little stuff that makes a difference. I get a faster Thunderbolt connector. I get, I can use, I can have more memory, whatever it is, rather than that core of I need more performance. I need, just a better system. So and like I say, right now we have a Nissan Leaf, so it's an electric car. It's got 80 miles of range or so, and that was really great in 2015. Now it's a little on the low end, and it's not a problem, but at some point, probably, when all the electric cars have 200-300 mile ranges, it will be worth upgrading, and I'll get CarPlay. Damn it, we'll get CarPlay.
Yeah. Spend the $600. Get CarPlay. You just bought a new iMac. Get CarPlay.
Precisely. I'm not buying a Tesla. See, if I got a Tesla, I wouldn't get CarPlay.
Well, I knew a girl that went shopping for a car, and she rejected like 6 cars because the headrest, she didn't like the way the headrest interfered with the way she wore her hair, which I thought was an insane way to look at it. But on the other hand, to your point, if it's something that is going to annoy you every single time you get in the car, it's relevant.
And like an early version of the Chevy Volt, which was electric with a extra gas hybrid gas engine in it. They had controls that were clearly not designed by anyone who ever lived in the Northeast, because they were touch controls and they didn't work with gloves on. Sort of like, it's cold here. I wear gloves in the winter. And it was just a terrible interface. I heard they fixed that at some point, but when we test drove one and we were looking at the Leaf, I was like, well, that's no good. We can't buy this car because I have to take my gloves off to use anything on the entire console. So design is important, and as you say, small things can add up. You at some point need to say, yeah, how much am I willing to put up with this? So I'll get the $600. I'll get the CarPlay. Okay.
We expect you to report back here next month on which CarPlay model you got. So what did you do with your with your aging iMac?
At the moment, it's just sitting on the other side of the desk, running Big Sur. So the master plan, which is going to take some gumption, is to actually open it up and replace the SSD. Now, this is a hard job because the 27-inch iMacs, they have adhesive all around the screen, and you have to cut the adhesive to open them up. And then to actually replace the SSD, it's called a blade SSD, you have to remove the entire motherboard. So this is a lot of work. And so I, frankly, it's one of those things where I'm waiting for winter, frankly, when I have like a weekend day when I can sit down and spend hours doing this, because I'm not that good at this stuff, so I move slowly, and it will take me a while. But I'm hoping that a lot of the funkiness that's been going on with it is the fact that it has this actually dysfunctional hardware deep inside it. Like the SSD, it's completely dead as far as I know. Like, it doesn't show up in disk utility or anything like that. I can't touch it. But there's something there that the computer possibly in some ways still knows is there. And so, I have this theory anyway that that's what's causing the problem. I've been using the computer while booting from an external Samsung T5 SSD, which is a cute little thing. I'd show it to you, but I have to unplug it, and that would crash it. And even though, again, going through USB 3 is much slower than having the internal SSD, it has not made a significant performance difference. So that's something where, I think that, again, I was worried that the computer was going to be dysfunctional, but in fact, I was able to really keep it going with buying an inexpensive SSD and have it put that external. So, and actually, I will just note for something. One of the lessons I learned is, remember, I had a backup, a time machine backup, and a bootable duplicate on a hard drive. Turns out the hard drive was not functional. I mean, it worked, but it was so slow that it actually I could not use the machine while booted from the hard drive in any significant way. And I was surprised by that fact. Because I've been keeping this bootable duplicate going, and every now and then I boot from it, and I'm like, okay, I can boot. But I wouldn't use it. And then when I actually tried to use the computer while booted from the hard drive, that did not work. Just way too slow. So if you have a bootable duplicate you're assuming that you could use in case of emergency, beware that if you're connecting via a relatively slow bus, that might be a problem. You're muted, Chuck.
I did that so I could go and get the T5 that it was right here.
Cute little buggers.
It's ridiculously small and thin. It's crazy how small and thin. Which actually, Adam, that's a good reminder to let folks know that they need. If I think it started with High Sierra. Joe Kissel and I just talked about this. I think it started with High Sierra, and is in Catalina. That there's a certain switch you have to flip on your computer if it has the T2 chip. Because if you don't flip that switch, then even if you have a bootable external, it will not boot from it. Yeah. It's a security feature and will not boot from it. So be warned about that. And I'm assuming we're going to see that continue in Big Sur as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, the T2 chip basically, it's a good security feature. I mean, it's annoying for troubleshooting reasons, but it makes sense to put it in because, if the computer can't be booted from an external drive, that makes it a whole lot more secure. But yes, I forget what the disk is. I forget what the name of it is. This is the first time I've had a T2 chip, so I haven't even done this yet in the month I've had the machine. But there's a utility that you turn that on in.
Yeah, I think it is. No, it's not disk utility. I think there is a separate utility that. It's Apple's. Yeah. Oh, there. Aaron in the chat room says startup security.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Yes. Thank you, Aaron. Yes. Oh, and what capacity is that? What capacity is this? I think this is a 1 gig that I bought. You can get them in 500.
The SSDs, yeah. I have probably terabyte.
What did I say? Gig?
Yeah, gig. Yeah, right.
Terabyte.
I was like, that's really small. No, I have a 1 terabyte one and a 2 terabyte one. I actually bought the 2 terabyte one to serve as my time machine backup for the new iMac because I was tired of listening to the stupid drive spin up and spin down and spin up and spin down. And so it's like, fine. I mean, I've got this new Mac. I'm going to actually splurge a little and get the SSD for time machine. So I'm not listening to a drive all day long unnecessarily. And they've gotten quite inexpensive, so they're entirely reasonable nowadays.
Well, that's it. I mean, it feels like if you're going to run a spinning disk, it should primarily be a data drive, or at least something that doesn't require you to have a lot of access to it. Because by today's standards, the SSDs are A, so fast, and B, so cheap that it just doesn't make sense anymore to buy a spinning drive.
Yeah.
So, this edition of Mac Voices is supported by you, our viewers and listeners, through our Patreon and PayPal sponsorship options. To learn more, visit macvoices.com/support. If you get value from Mac Voices, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/macvoices. You get access to the Mac Voices Thinking Posts, exclusive Patreon-only video chats, as well as having your name in the credits of each Mac Voices show for the months you support. Having you as a Mac Voices patron helps us pay the bills and keep building and improving Mac Voices. Or if one-time support is more your speed, use our PayPal option. You too will get your name in the show notes of every Mac Voices episode for the month you contribute. Or you can support the show by writing a review in iTunes or buying through our affiliate links. Neither of these costs you anything, but they help Mac Voices a great deal. Again, macvoices.com/support. Thanks to everyone who contributes to keep Mac Voices firing on all cylinders. Question from Robert in the chat room, which is a pretty broad one. What is the future of iCloud?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't see Apple changing it a whole lot, honestly, because Apple's never really understood online services. And so I think I see iCloud a little bit more as like a utility or something that provides utility to other things Apple does. So for instance, mail, that you can, iCloud in essence can serve as the source of your mail and you use an iCloud account. And you can go read it on the iCloud site, but realistically, why would you bother? Unless you're in some, traveling weirdly or something like that. But it provides that truth for syncing calendars, for syncing contacts. It's a storage, for a storage place so apps can store things that you can get to from all the different platforms. So I don't see Apple doing a huge amount with iCloud in the future in the sense of expanding its role. but I think it becomes ever more built into the Apple experience in some ways. It is a little disappointing that Apple has never increased the amount of free storage you get. 5 gigabytes is so little, and I think that they probably could entice more people to pay more if they could use it a little bit more to start. But like iCloud Photos actually is a perfect example. iCloud Photos, I mean, I wrote a book about the very first version of iPhoto, and I've been using this stuff, since day one. And iCloud Photos is what I wanted. I was like, it was so obvious that we need to have something where all your photos are synced between all your devices, and you make a change in one device, and it's automatically synced to all the others without you having to do or think about anything. And so, yeah, I'm willing to pay the $3 a month or whatever it is, so I have 200 gig of storage there, and that makes a difference for me. And I think Apple could probably convince a few more people to do that if they allowed them to test with a little bit more than 5 gig. I did get a question recently, just somewhat randomly, if people thought that Time Machine was ever going to do online backup, and I thought that was an interesting question, because I could see that happening. I mean, Time Machine, for people who don't know, Big Sur is going to make a big jump. So we've had these APFS formatted drives for a couple of operating systems now, Sierra, I think. And but Time Machine has always been limited to HFS Plus, which is the old disk format that Apple's had for decades. And so in Big Sur, we're seeing a major update to Time Machine that's going to APFS. And I could imagine that team, after they finish that big upgrade, move on to the idea of, well, maybe Time Machine could also store stuff in iCloud. And, is there a way to make that reasonable, in terms of the speed and the performance and the cost to Apple in terms of the storage and all that? But that could encourage more people to buy storage in iCloud if Apple were looking for a way to increase that revenue stream.
One other thing about iCloud, though, that I don't think a lot of us appreciate completely, and I just was reminded of it because I just got these AirPods Pro, is that it's sort of the glue that ties so much of the ecosystem together. I paired my AirPods Pro with my iPhone, and then came over here, and guess what? In the Bluetooth menu, it's already there, waiting to be selected. The syncing of notes, the syncing of Keynote numbers and pages, documents across, so that when you save one on one device and you go and try to open it over there, there it is. So it's the glue that ties everything together. And in some cases, not all, but in some cases, it's so seamless that you kind of forget about it.
Well, and I think the AirPods are the perfect example there, because you don't think about it. You literally pair them once, and suddenly they're available on all your devices. And you're like, oh, cool. How'd that happen? And as anyone who's ever fought with Bluetooth device pairing, which has got to be just about everybody, because Bluetooth kind of stinks, this is something that Apple has done that mainly makes it a lot better. And so I think that that's something, that you're right, that people do not appreciate that. And Apple, and to be fair, that's the kind of thing you just get when that 5 gig, you don't worry about storage. It just works. You sign into your iCloud account, and boom, all your stuff, all your settings and that kind of thing just move over appropriately.
Yeah, and that is so nice for a new machine. I mean, if you can't or don't want to migrate, you can turn that on, and you're right. So many of your settings, not everything, but so many come roaring back in, so that you don't have to jump through all those hoops, and you can just fiddle with the third-party apps that need to be fiddled with. But yeah. So Thomas says issue with Pro. So is that Mac Pro? AirPods Pro?
That's with the earbuds. The new version. And when he was talking about it, because the new version, the old version, you could put a ski helmet on, tap the helmet, and says, Siri, answer the phone. The new versions, you have to physically touch. As a result, you have to take a helmet off if you're out skiing.
Oh, skiing.
Well, this was something that I identified with the Apple folks down, and they gave me a refund and said, yeah, you want to go back to the old system. We didn't bring the new technology forward to allow for that.
So in theory, you're supposed to be able to control the AirPods Pro with Siri by just saying, hey.
In theory.
in theory. I'm not sure I agree with it. I
But
do
it's
tend
in
to
a
agree with you. I'm
helmet.
not sure it always works, but
It's in a helmet. You have to tap the helmet, and it says fine, and Siri does on this version 2. Version 3, you have to touch it.
Yeah, I will admit I did a comparison actually for slightly awkward reason. I ended up with a pair of AirPods and a pair of AirPods Pro. We lost one and found it again, and so I was going back and forth and flipping back and forth. And honestly, I prefer the AirPods. The AirPods Pro, the noise cancellation is amazing. And so if you're vacuuming or mowing the lawn or whatever it is, something riding an airplane where you want the noise cancellation, that's great. But otherwise, I just found the AirPods more comfortable, and I really don't like that kind of, I don't know, like water in the ear feeling when it closes the ear canal. So it's all personal preference, but when I went through it, I was like, I guess I actually prefer the AirPods, and they're cheaper, so that's good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm anxious to take these on a plane. I mean, if we all ever get back on planes again, because
that's never happening. I'm doing
that. Great! I just blew the money on these.
Yeah, sorry. No. Don't bother.
Because I've got the Bose Quiet Comforts over the years, and they feel so good. And I've never had good luck with in-ears until I got these, and it's like, you're right, Adam, the noise cancellation, even just for something like this, is absolutely amazing. And so now I really want to see what it's like to wear them on a cross-country trip and see how long they stay comfortable. But I've worn these now for, I've worn them for longer than this session. I'm not sure I've done 5 hours solid, but and they are just, I don't even notice them after a while. They're just nice and comfortable. So
yeah, that's it. I mean, one of the things that's great about this is it's personal preference, right? So it's unfortunately, a little hard to test both of them to see what you'll prefer, but they really do. I mean, if a lot of people I know are just like, don't like things in their ears very much, and so the AirPods Pro, they just by definition have to fit deeper in your ear because they're trying to block the external sound both passively and actively. Whereas the AirPods kind of cantilever, they sort of hang there. It's a little kind of magic actually how they stay in so well, given the fact that they're really not pushed in the same way. But yeah, no, I think Apple, and my understanding is Apple has made a boatload of money on those things. That they are so popular because they did such a good job. I mean, that's one of those cases where Apple, really did nice design work, nice integration work. Maybe they're not like the ultimate audio quality. Who cares? You get up into the 90%. That's not the problem, and they really hit it out of the park on so many other ways where wireless earbuds had failed. So.
Well, and I have to tell you, I'm still, when I bought my original AirPods, I knew I was going to send them back, just because I'd never had anything wireless that felt good in my ears, or for that matter, that would stay in my ears, and I love them. And I kind of approach these with the same thing. It's like, well, I'm going to try them, but they can't be as good because different design is never going to work, and it does. And I am notoriously difficult to fit for any kind of in-ear devices, and gee, these are wonderful. Craig had a couple comments in the chat room. I suspect iCloud is a big constant dollar stream, but his 16 terabyte of Time Machine backup connected to Airport Extreme is slow and tedious compared to iCloud backups.
Interesting, yeah. I will say I'm not a big fan of Time Machine over wireless. Either the time capsule or connecting a drive to the Airport Extreme. And it's not that I don't like the theory of it. I love the theory of it. But there's two problems. So the time capsule, I don't like the theory of. None of these are sold anymore, so they're a little obsolete in some ways anyway. But the problem with the time capsule is that you're putting two things in one box, so that if either one fails, the whole thing can potentially go down. So that always troubles me a little bit. But more of the problem is this Time Machine is not designed in a client server fashion. It's designed to be directly connected. And so if anything interrupts a Time Machine backup wirelessly, which is a whole lot easier than when it's actually plugged into your computer, that's when the Time Machine backups tend to get corrupt. And so it's just, I've seen much higher percentage of people have trouble with Time Machine when they're backing up wirelessly. And so I tend not to recommend that much as sitting here, don't want to listen to the hard drive in front of me. I understand. It's great to be able to move it off. So, as to why it would be slow, I don't know, although 16 terabytes is pretty big. It's possible if you've got that much space and you've been backing up to it for a very long time, it's possible Time Machine is just, I don't want to say filling up, but it may not have been designed to have a data store that big and still have decent performance. As I was noting before, Time Machine in Big Sur is going to be APFS, which should make it a lot faster. However, you will have to restart. You will not be able to take over an old Time Machine backup in Big Sur. And so that's worth keeping in mind. And I don't know, actually would be a little surprised if Time Machine in Big Sur would work over to an external, to a drive connected to an Airport Extreme. I don't know that either way, but I would be a little surprised.
Should we get into an argument over the defragging of that hard drive as being a possible benefit?
There's just no telling. Because Time Machine is doing such funny things with hard links all over the place, and I wouldn't ever mess with a Time Machine disk. It's just you're just too dangerous. It's not a normal drive that things are going to see in a normal way. And in general, I have to say, in the modern world, I'm just not a big fan of disk repair software. Disk utility.
Really?
Use disk utility. If disk utility doesn't do it, reformat and restore from backup. And if you don't have a backup, you should. End of story. That long ago, everyone loved Disk Warrior and various other disk repair things and whatnot, because it was hard to. Things were slow. It was really hard to reformat and restore and things like that. And backups were not. People didn't have as good backups. But it's just not worth the question, particularly with APFS and all of that. To try to fix something when who knows whether it's actually fixable, and Apple's documentation is weak and this and that and the other thing. So I'm not a fan of disk repair software at this point. Just reformat and restore.
Which is just another good advertisement to go and get that little T5 or any other SSD as a backup. Yeah.
Okay. So Craig's he's backing up. He's two 8 terabyte external drives, and backing up 6 Macs on your LAN. Yeah. Oh, wow. I hate to say it, but I fear that's the sort of thing that Time Machine's not very good at. I haven't looked into it recently, but this is the kind of thing that Retrospect was designed for. The Retrospect is when it was like the original great backup app for the Mac, and then it had a number of many years of kind of decline and being swapped between companies and this, that, and the other thing. But the company that's behind it now is real again, and it's designed for heavy duty network backups and stuff like that. So you might take a look at Retrospect if you're actually backing up that many machines and that much data.
Yeah, Craig, I have to ask: is that Is your network hardwired, or are you running all that wirelessly? Because that would seem to explain some of the slowness. If you're wired, it wouldn't. But if you are not wired,
wireless can be pretty fast these days. So
yeah, wireless. Okay, wireless. So
yeah, could be.
String a bunch of Ethernet and see what happens.
Yeah, some of this stuff you can test too.
Yeah.
I will admit, I'm old school in this regard. Love me my Wi-Fi, but when I've got a Mac sitting in a location, I'm going to run Ethernet to it. It's just hard to beat gigabit Ethernet. Is built into all the Macs these days, and it's just more reliable. And I always have the Wi-Fi on as well because certain things require it, location stuff, and frankly, some badly behaved apps do as well. But nonetheless, Ethernet just it takes a variable out of any troubleshooting.
That is a really good way to say it. It takes a variable out because for doing this, I mean, I could easily do this wirelessly, and I have, but sometimes, no, not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Just one less thing.
So, yeah.
Well, Adam, I think that maybe it's time for us to wrap up. I need to go and polish off my Dragoon armor.
I mean, I expect full, all armor with, the helmet with the big plumy thing and the sword.
Are you going to design a coat of arms in Mac Paint?
Yes.
Right, that's your job, Adam.
Shield.
Yeah, that's your job. And then we got to find somebody else to hammer that out for us.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to make a note. Craig's now commenting that he connects individual hard disks and uses carbon copy cloner for Macs not running Catalina. One of the things that I do, I have for various, I don't have that many Macs running anymore on a kind of a regular basis, but Tanya's iMac, Tanya's MacBook. She actually had an 11-inch MacBook as well. I have a MacBook Air, and so we have 5 or 6 Macs that are kind of in use, and the ones that are really in use have Time Machine backups and bootable duplicates and backplays and that kind of stuff going on. But for all these others, I actually at some point. They're often relatively old Macs. They don't have a lot of disk space. I just took a terabyte drive. And made it APFS so that I could easily reformat partitions and things like that. And I made a partition for each drive, and I cloned it I use SuperDuper, but Carbon Copy Cloner is great also. And I don't update those all that often, once every 3 months, 6 months, a year, when I think of it, kind of. But I have this one drive that has these somewhat out of date, but nonetheless potentially useful backups of every Mac in the house. And that's something which turns out to be relatively easy to do. And, I said just once every so often, I go around and plug it in and run SuperDuper and get everything backed up. But I like having that extra backup just in case. And, it's outside of all of the other systems and all of that. But, if something happened to the 11-inch MacBook Air, I could bring that one back in a matter of hours. It's not super fast. Or frankly, if something happened to that machine and we're like, oh, I wonder what was on it, we could actually go check. So, spinning drives are also really cheap. And so that can be a nice way to give yourself a little bit of peace of mind on data throughout the house or throughout your network.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you intended this between the lines, but I know one thing that we're talking about spinning versus SSDs, the spinning stuff is so cheap. And even if you can't boot from it, right, it's nice to know that your data is there. In fact, everything is there. You could install get a new Mac and buy an external SSD and then restore over to that and get everything back. It's just going to take you a little longer and a little more hassle, but it's going to save you that upfront money of buying an SSD and having to just sit it on the shelf. You spend the money, you clone it and then sit it there, which is always kind of a bummer. So, yeah. Adam, thank you. This we kind of went all over the place, but this was fun.
As really we are wont to do, I'm afraid.
Once in a while, but some great questions and participation from the group. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, Adam, I'll see you next time back here. We'll do it again, and always. And
anytime.
VMUG, I want to say 2 things. First of all, thanks for having us. But second, congratulations on keeping your group going during the COVID times with these remote kind of meetings. There are a number of groups that I don't think they've folded completely, but they've just gone offline and, nothing's happening. And you guys are making it happen. So good job. Keep it up. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. We will be back with more. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching.
Ciao.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.